This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. Today is Black Friday, and with Black Friday, most people, if you are into that kind of thing, are looking to get good deals, right? You're looking to get good discounts, whatever it is. And don't worry, this is not an ad read. This is just me using the holiday as an introduction for today's topic. And today's topic is Browns who have been great deals for this franchise. So this is a video about where Andrew Berry has really lucked out or has done a great job of getting good value out of certain spots. The first thing that we're going to talk about is Amari Cooper, because you can look at the contract, say $20 million a year for Amari Cooper. You're getting about what you paid for, but the thing is that the Browns didn't pay for that contract. The Cowboys paid for that contract. Now, the Browns are currently paying that $20 million, but if you look at wide receiver salaries over the years, it has ballooned to crazy amounts. Like, I think Tyreek Hill gets, I believe, $36 million a year. You just look at these guys, the averages per year. Tyreek gets 30. Devontae Adams gets 28. Cooper Kupp gets 26.7. AJ Brown gets 25. Stephon Diggs 24. DK 24. Debo 23. Terry McLaurin 23.2. DJ Moore 20.6. You know, you got all these guys in the 20s, and then you have Amari Cooper, who is around that 20 mark, right? Yeah, at that 20 mark exactly. And he's playing about at the level that you would expect a $20 million wide receiver to go to. So what makes him such a good value? Well, it's how you got him on the team. You had to trade for Amari Cooper. And the fact is that the Browns only gave up a 5th round pick to get the production that is Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper, in the 2 years he's been in Cleveland, he's on track to surpass over 1,000 yards. And I believe over 5 touchdowns. I don't think Odell Beckham has hit one of his years when we traded for Odell. Now, Odell was at like an $18 million number, which was high for the time, but more productive than any receiver that you've traded for, or more consistent than any receiver that you've had, right? The one Josh Gordon year withstanding, Amari Cooper's been about as productive as they come. In his 2 years in Cleveland, he's accumulated so far 1,900 yards and 11 receiving touchdowns. He's been very consistent, very clutch with this team. And that's just per 17 games, he gets you 1,207. So far with what he's done in Cleveland. And he's on track for another career year, because last year he had a career year in touchdowns. I believe he had 9. This year he's not so high in touchdowns. He's only at 2, but the yards seem to be coming at a higher clip this year. So Amari has a chance to surpass his highest yard total, which was about 1,100. Right now, he's on track for about 1,200. So you've been getting really good value out of that. Look, $20 million wide receiver play, you're getting what you paid for when it comes to that. Absolutely. And that's what $20 million at wide receiver should look like. But also for a 5th round pick to take him off the hands of Dallas. I mean, I still can't believe that Dallas is super happy with that pick. I understand that they wanted to save some money there, but if they could have CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper right now, boy, with those jokes about Dallas losing in the playoffs be done for, right? Because they'd be a serious threat, somebody who you can see can have the offense to keep up with the Philadelphia, especially with the team with that much good defense in the NFC. So you just look at that trade and you go, that was a good one. And honestly, you ask yourself, where would the Browns be if it weren't for that? Another one where you have to look at the trade value, and this one was kind of criticized at the time, but I think most people understood what the Browns were doing, was trading for Dustin Hopkins. Now, some people, the critical side of this argument, and I will always contest that the people who made this argument were just being lazy or disingenuous. Either way, they aren't to be taken serious. Not because of the opinion, like not because they weren't super great fans of trading for Dustin Hopkins or that they're critical of Andrew Berry. The reason I say they're not to be taken seriously is like the incredibly disingenuous slant that you had to make this trade seem like a bad idea. So basically the Browns traded like a 7th-round pick in 2-3 years or something like that for Dustin Hopkins. Now the negative slant on this trade was that, oh my goodness, look at the Browns, LOL, trading for somebody who lost the kicking competition. As if like we don't know that Dustin Hopkins is already a solid kicker, as if we don't understand the value of making sure that you get the guy that you want, instead of just waiting to hope that waivers do you a favor. It was real disingenuous when the criticism happened, but the trades worked out better than anybody's imagined. I believe he has 3, which you can categorize as game-winning field goals this season. So many clutch field goals throughout the year. He's been great on plus 50, which nobody expected. He's been very consistent. And this team is 7-3 in large part due to him, right? And we talked about this last year. As much as Cade York saved you in the opening week game, Cade York cost you a lot last year, right? Like we could count to 2 losses that happened strictly because we felt like Cade just didn't do what he needed to do. 3 if you count the New York Jets game. And that's not to say that all of these games we're just going to throw on Cade and it was all Cade's fault, but Cade played a hand to it, right? If you had competent kicking, you might have not been in the situation to give up those games. And if you look at those 2 to 3 losses that you had last year, Browns went 7-10. You see where I'm getting, right? You see where I'm getting. They went 7-10. You get those 3 wins back. Next thing you know, you're 10-7. A lot of people feel like the Browns probably going to get to 10-7. And then if you look at what happened at the first 11 games or first 11 weeks last year that Deshaun Watson was suspended for, I believe the Browns got to 4-7. They're at 7-3 through 10 games. We'll see what they are through 4. But again, you can see the difference in a good defense and good field goal kicking. And if this offense cannot turn the ball over, we're going to see even more returns out of it. So Dustin Hopkins, great value that they got there. Another guy who's been a great deal for this Cleveland Browns team, Dawand Jones. Yes, Dawand, you've been getting starting level veteran tackle play for 4th-round prices. And I think my point about the reason the Watson trade really isn't that bad is if you look at it on paper, right? Even if Watson never pans out to what you want him to be and you never win a championship with him on the roster, right? It didn't really hurt you because you got very fortunate in the draft. And what I mean by this is when you look at every draft class, you want somebody in that draft class that you felt like was an impactful player for that team, right? Wherever you get him, it does not matter after the day of the draft, but you want to make sure you get one of those and you get a couple extras and you feel good about that draft. Like that's the recipe to a good draft class. I know that people act like every draft pick that you draft in a draft class has to be good, but realistically, if you get one solid player and 2 good ones, that's a great draft class, right? Like you can talk about all these home run draft classes where you get like 4 great players. That's great and all, but you want to hit about 1 really good player and then 2 good ones. And despite the fact that the Browns have had less picks, they've still been able to deliver on that ratio, right? You look at 2020, they get Jed, who's a starter. They get Grant, who looks more like a star. And I believe Taki was in that 2020 draft, or he might have been 2019. Either way, you go through that 2020 draft, there's probably going to be another solid player in there. 2021, you get Greg Newsome and JOK. 2022, you come out of there with Martin Emerson. And then 2023, well, you got DPJ in 2020. That's the one I'm forgetting. And in 2023, you get Dawand Jones, and Dawand Jones is such a hit at 4th round that it really don't even matter if any of these other picks pan out. That draft's a success. But Dawand, being as good as he is like saved this team because one, right now we will be with 2 backup tackles that, we saw what the game plan had to be when Dawand couldn't play versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. I imagine it would have been very hard to get to 7-3 without Dawand Jones at that right tackle position, without that consistency there. And he's playing at a high level, and quite frankly, a higher level at times from a pass protection standard than we saw Jack Conklin get to consistently. Like he does a better job blocking TJ Watt than anybody has on this Browns team. So yeah, great value there. Myles Garrett is another one who the Browns are getting tremendous value on. This is a key to what I always say about contracts. Don't nobody actually care about these contracts unless it becomes something to point at, right? But if you're playing good, don't nobody care. Don't nobody care Tyreek Hill get $30 million a year, even though he play wide receiver. Don't nobody care that Myles Garrett gets 25. Don't nobody care. Why? Because they balling, right? And if you balling, you're a good value on the football team. And let me tell you something, $25 million, go ahead and shop that around the NFL in any free agency class to see if you could replace the value of Myles Garrett with the measly $25 million or whatever the hell that they're paying Myles Garrett. Try to find somebody to replace Myles Garrett with that much money. He's one of a kind. He is worth whatever contract you throw at him because he's the type of defensive player that exceeds the expectations of the salary cap, quite frankly, right? Like you never worried about what these plus level, like nobody ever cared about what Ray Lewis's contract looked like, right? Or Ed Reed or Troy Polamalu. It's the same way that nobody ever gonna care about what Miles's contract looks like. Even if he's getting paid a ton of money, he's that big of a game changer. Good luck trying to find another Myles Garrett with $25 million, right? Good luck trying to replace Myles Garrett production and presence with $25 million a year. Good luck. You ain't never gonna do it. A-Walk and Taki have been great value free agents, I think. For guys who are on 1-year deals repeatedly, they've been able to come in and be solid pieces, solid foundational pieces to the point where I'm like, hey, we should probably keep Taki long term, or A-Walk, or both of them. In that same vein, I'm gonna throw Dalvin Tomlinson in there, Mo Hurst and Shelby Harris, because their veteran leadership in that interior defensive line has been something that this team has sorely missed since Sheldon Richardson got cut. And you could just see the impact that it had on a Jordan Elliott, where we're seeing some of the best football he's ever played in his career simply in that situation, despite the fact he's getting less snaps, right? Like he's sharing snaps with 3 really qualified players instead of playing a bulk of snaps, but he's getting much better because look what he has around him. He has so much support around him, both on the field and off the field. And I can't help but think that that has something to do with why we're seeing him play so much better this year. And this bodes well to Siaki Ika, right? If you want to develop and draft these younger guys to bring them along, that's why you have a Dalvin Tomlinson. It's why you have a Maurice Hurst, guys who can hold it down, show them what a pro looks like. It's part of the reason the Browns brought in Joe Flacco, right? Not necessarily to play. Like if it comes down to it, yes, Joe Flacco can play, but I think the bigger role and value of Joe Flacco is that, hey, I have been a successful quarterback. I have done things in the NFL. I have a lot to offer you, and I can help you win. That's what makes this Browns team different this year. They have veteran leadership in the right places, and the coaching staff and front office understand the value of that veteran leadership, understand the value of getting the right guys in the locker room, because they saw having the wrong guys in the locker room destroy a team last year, right? But now that they have the right guys in the locker room, and you look around this group, this room, or, in this roster, you're going to see multiple veterans at positions that are key, right? You talk about Amari Cooper out there, a wide receiver, even somebody like Marquise Goodwin is a good veteran to have in those situations. The offensive line just full of veteran players for these younger guys to get brought along. That's why you're seeing the development of Dawand Jones moving along so smoothly. At corner, you got a vet like Denzel, which is crazy to say, but yes, Denzel Ward at this point in his career, not an old player, but he's definitely like been in the league long enough, right? But you have somebody experienced like Denzel Ward at linebacker. You have a ton of experience there with Anthony Walker, and even Taki, who's been in the league for a little while there. And then you move around the defensive line, you see more experience, Zadarius Smith, and you've seen that that's helped your development. I think a lot of people get it wrong, right? When you see these teams tanking, they clear out these rosters of all these veterans and they just add a bunch of young players onto the roster and say, hey, they're going to figure it out. We young. We're going to develop these guys. You can't develop without a template, right? Like you can't expect something to grow into something great if that person don't even know what great's supposed to look like in the building. We've lost track of that, right? With all of this like cost cutting and we're going to get the cheapest people possible and we're going to stink and all this. We forgot the value of veterans, of veteran players on a roster when it comes to player development. And this Browns team has figured that out. And that's why when they are starting a DTR and Deshaun Watson has to go to LA to rehab his shoulder after his surgery and he can't be in that building anymore, they immediately bring in somebody like a Joe Flacco, right? They could have went cheap. They could have got like a Chris Oladokun or something like that. But they decided, nah. What we want is a veteran player. All right, bring him along. If he has to play, he has to play. But it's about just having somebody on that sideline, having somebody in that quarterback room, having somebody in that support system so that when DTR is having a rough day of practice or a rough day of study, he could go and talk to somebody who's qualified to answer these questions about, hey, what do I do? Right? The Browns have not had great answers for that historically. And again, stability matters for this reason, because you look at the lack of development of these Browns players that we've had over the last 20 years, and you've seen what's changed. It's stability and it's leadership, right? Like it comes down to those things. You want to have stability and you want to have guys who could show people the way. Now, sometimes people take it too far, right? You don't want to have a roster just full of veterans. You want to have a nice mix, but it's about having those guys there to bring people along, to show them the way to success. And it's no surprise that even in the last few years where the Browns have had no first round picks because they traded for Deshaun Watson, but they've had a more veteran roster, they've been able to get more out their young players than when we had top 10 picks playing day one. It tells you everything you need to know about what a good organization does. This is what Baltimore's done. This is what Cincinnati has done. This is what Pittsburgh has done. This is why they've been successful. Now we're getting a taste of it. I hope we continue to do that because these veteran players in these key spots are important. I think, sorry I got on the sidetrack here, but that's why getting a Joe Flacco for a DTR is really important, because it just signifies to me, at least, they understand the value in the development of their players with these guys, right? It's no mistake. A-Walk gets to play for a while. JOK looks much better. A-Walk goes down for the year. JOK don't look as good, right? It makes sense that you put some veterans in the room at defensive tackle and edge. All of a sudden, hey, Alex Wright looks good. All of a sudden, Jordan Elliott looks good. You get that veteran leadership at corner like they've had for a while. You're able to develop other corners like Martin Emerson and Greg Newsome. And let me tell you, they're probably going to bring along Cam Mitchell when they get back off of IR, and they're going to bring along more guys along with them, right? You look at the offensive line. Why are they always able to throw guys in? I saw somebody ask me that question. Because they have veteran leadership. So that means okay, when they have somebody go down, they need to plug somebody in. We got 4-5 guys who can get that dude support either on the field or off the field. That's the value of it, right? That's the value of continuity. That's the value of consistency. And that's the value of knowing what veterans you need to have in the building to help these guys, right? Development is so much more than just playing time. It's all of those other factors that make a team a good organization, a good landing spot for a young player. And what we're seeing is the Browns have become a good landing spot. If a player struggles in Denver or somewhere like Chicago. That's a better example. Denver's not that much of a disaster, and they're not really a disaster at all. But like a Chicago, right, where we're like, oh, stuff's not going right. That player's not doing that. You know, this is a place where they want to land. Like if I'm Justin Fields, after that year that he has, well, not Justin Fields. I don't know if he's going to get cut, but if I'm a quarterback on the verge of getting cut, or if I'm a offensive lineman on the verge of getting cut, I'm trying to land in Cleveland because they have all of the tools there to be successful. So it's no mistake that you're getting better play out your young players now, even though you haven't had the same quality of draft pick, because you have a quality of development, and that's more important than where you pick. In my opinion, it's more important than where you pick. Where you pick's overrated. We picked Justin Gilbert in the top 10. Where you pick's overrated. It's how you develop the picks that you have that matters. And that's why the teams that are good stay good, and the teams that stink stay stinky, right? Because they don't have the fertile ground to grow things in like the other organizations do. And you're watching the Browns in real time figure this out and become that over the last 4 years that Stefanski and Barry have been here. So kudos to them. Other good values here. Martin Emerson, again, I kind of touched on that, playing a high level corner, third round pick, third round money. He's going to be great for this team. But that's my thoughts on the good values that the Browns have been able to get, and why they've been able to get these good values despite the fact that, you know, because of the Deshaun Watson trade, they've had relatively low resources, and that's because these aren't the same LOL Browns. They've been really well ran, and you're starting to see the fruits of the labor and the fruits of the program start to develop for this team, because now they have veterans in the right place. Now they have guys who've been here 6-7 years that aren't just Joe Bitonio, right? They have multiple guys in multiple different positions to show younger players, okay, yeah, this is what you do. This is what you need to do. This is what you need to study and all that. And the more continuity you have, the more of that you have, the more of a program you start to develop, and the more and more you start to just consistently win football games. There's a reason Mike Tomlin hasn't been under 500, and the reason Mike Tomlin hasn't been under 500 is because he inherited a program, right? It's easier to inherit a program, right? He got a program, and all he had to do was not mess it up, and he's done a great job not messing it up. But you know, when you look at Kevin, he did not start with the program. Start with some like good building blocks, no doubt, but he did not start with the program, neither did Andrew Berry, but they've built this thing into something thanks to having some good years, thanks to having some continuity. And now we're sitting here 7-3 with 3 different quarterbacks playing, and we feel really good about it overall. But that's my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have a better night. Peace.